Hello and welcome to Global Order. My name is Ishan Dhar. On the evening of November 10th, New Delhi, the capital of India, was rocked by a car bombing in the vicinity of the historical Red Fort. This happened as multiple terror modules were being cracked down upon in the country. Jaish-e-Mohammed, the Pakistani sponsored terrorist organization, was believed to have been responsible, along with a lesser known Al Qaeda franchise operating in Jammu and Kashmir called the Ansar Ghazwatul Hind. In order to decipher what exactly has happened and what we can expect in the coming days, I'm being joined by a very special guest. Abhijit Iyer Mitra is a senior fellow at the Institute of Peace and Conflict Studies. He's been trained as a defense economist, but that is one of several hats he wears. Please stay tuned, for this is going to be a fascinating conversation you don't want to miss. Thank you very much for joining us here at Global Order. We eagerly look forward to your insights.
Thank you so much for having me on, Ishan. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Awesome. Now, I'm sure you're aware of this, but there is a clip going around on social media, which some people have identified in the aftermath of this horrific car bombing that took place in the vicinity of the Red Fort. You were on another podcast, and I think it was sometime in the aftermath of Operation Sindoor, where you did say that you were expecting not just a single terror attack within, I guess, a major metropolitan hub in India, but an entire series of terror attacks. And the evidence that has now been gathered seems to point to the fact that there was, in fact, a series of terror attacks planned, possibly more than 30 sites, more than around 3,000 kilos of explosives. What indicators were there at that time that something like this was going to happen?
Right. So several indicators. The first thing we've been hearing is, what started off Sindoor was the attack in the Pahalgam meadow.
Right.
And if you noticed, out of the 6 terrorists who attacked those civilians, 2 of them had been in the valley. They'd been infiltrated 3 years prior. Now, a terrorist in the valley has a shelf life, a shelf life of between 4 to 6 months. They're killed within 6 months of infiltration. These guys had been lying in wait for about 3 years. And what I then started digging up a lot of information. And it turns out some 30, 40 people had been infiltrated over the years since the end of the insurgency in 2019.
Right.
Since the abrogation of 370 in 2019, we can't exactly put a date to when the insurgency ended.
Right.
And why were all these people getting, accumulated on the other side of the border? Pahalgam by itself didn't make sense. It was clearly for a bigger event. The second thing that we saw was how are these people able to survive? It wouldn't have been just because they were local help and things like that. Local help is vastly overstated because anyone who knows Kashmir will tell you that the locals in villages, because their life is under threat, they're actually told to cooperate with the terrorists, give them shelter. It's just when they leave, they're meant to call up the local commanding officer and tell him, oh, 2 guys, this is roughly what they look like and this is where they're heading. And then they get money from the terrorists for the hospitality, and they get money from the army for getting tipped off. So it's
it's not strictly ideological at all.
Yeah. It's a total win-win situation for everybody involved. So how have they managed to stay off the radar for 3 years? Between 2 and 3 years, depending on who was coming in. Some of them are still at large. The third thing was the immediate vector, which is why I thought now is when the terror attacks are going to happen, which was, it doesn't matter what the public propaganda is about, Pakistan's great victory in Operation Sindoor. It's the fact that the corps commanders were very, very unhappy. The 11 corps commanders were very unhappy with Asim Munir because they had to deal with the consequences of those strikes. He got all the PR and publicity. I mean,
Right.
if it was the Pakistan Air Force that shot down, 40, 50, 500 Indian planes, I don't know how many. I don't know what the current claim is. how is it that he becomes field marshal? What exactly did the Pakistan army do in that operation exactly? I thought it was the Pakistan Air Force doing everything. And the poor Air Chief Marshal gets nothing. He maybe gets a commendation medal at best.
Right.
So there was a lot of anger. All my sources in Pakistan were telling me there is anger. You could see a lot of Pakistani YouTubers uh, criticizing Asim Munir, which would never happen. We know these YouTubers are close to certain members of the army.
Correct.
They would dare do something like that, especially in wartime, without having the protection of some corps commander or the other. So we knew there was a lot of anger. And in order to save his own ass, he basically had to generate more hostility because at a time of war, dissent stops.
Everybody coalesces together and sort of
Exactly.
acts as one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And they've done this very, very well in the past. The fourth thing that happened was this sudden proximity with Trump, which is a diplomatic victory. Unlike the so called military victory of Pakistan, they have managed to turn the tables very spectacularly with America. You know, for 5, 6, 7 years of complete isolation or being ignored, to getting right, what, 3 meetings with Trump in the space of, what, 3, 4 months?
Yeah, since May.
Now, yeah. Now the excuse the Americans give us is, oh, it's always our uh, effect on Pakistan is that we have a restraining effect. It prevents them. That's not the way the Pakistanis see it. You see, they see it as an encouraging effect. It actually makes them more trigger happy and revanchist or revisionist, whatever. I mean, I don't. It's a little bit of
Makes
everything,
them
right?
bolder, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That was going to happen. Now, if you look at the past, Pakistan was in deep trouble when 9/11 happened. Within 2 months, America had been won over as the uh, indispensable corridor to Pakistan or whatever. And what happens after 2 months? You have the attack on parliament, which was literally, there's no Hindi word for it. Like challenge, challenge doesn't capture what lalkar is. Kisi ko lalkarna, right? It's what you do in kabaddi. You literally go
Right.
into the other territory and say kabaddi, 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 kabaddi kind of thing. So it's a certain cockiness,
Yeah, yeah.
uh, 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 and that is what the parliament attack was. That we can do a lot to you, and because the Americans are with me, there's very little you can do. And given what Trump said on the 10th of May, uh, the need for him, initially, the need to carry out the attack then was survival. It went into peacockery once Trump had been turned. And that was the complete rationale that I'd used to reach that particular
To
problem.
expect something like that. So I guess the natural question to think of is, given our own, I suppose, change in security doctrine, where we will consider actions by their proxies to be tantamount to acts of war. Do you see a resumption of Sindoor in the offing? Should, I suppose, and the right kind of evidence be found, or do you see it playing out differently?
I think it's unpredictable. There were
Yeah,
two things that the Prime Minister's speech on the 10th of May said. One is that, we will choose the time and place to take you on. So it may happen, it may not happen.
right.
And the second was very important. For the first time, he rejected the evidentiary threshold. We will no longer provide you with any kind of evidence. Uh, if you believe us, well and good. If you don't, boo hoo hoo, cry me a bucket. We'll do what we need to do when we need to do it. So I don't think the evidence is important right now. The question really is, what is the political calculus if they're going to hit or not? Um, Personally, I might be wrong on this, but personally, I feel they'll wait to sign a trade deal with Trump and then go in for the hit because Trump will take this very personally because he's been bleating about how he made peace between the two of us.
Right.
Uh, they'd be like, okay, we gave him a trade deal, now back off. I think so. I may be wrong.
And do you think that should that were to happen, there would be enough targets as far as Jaish-e-Mohammed is concerned? I mean, renewed facilities, new facilities, and so forth.
Let's put it this way. When you look at things from the army looks at things differently, and the Air Force and Navy look at things very differently. So when you're army centric, if the Chinese build a road in Tibet, and if we build a road to counter it, we're essentially offering the Chinese a highway to Delhi. You can drive tanks at 40 kilometers per hour all the way to Delhi. You don't want to do that.
Right.
If you give the same thing to the Navy or the Air Force, they're like, oh my God, Christmas came early, or Diwali came early. Well, Diwali is more appropriate. Diwali came early because they're looking at this as a target-rich environment. They're like, man, this is something I can bomb.
Yeah, this
Before
is infra. Yeah.
intense. This is infra. I can bomb it. I can justify that $1 million precision-guided munition on this bridge that costs $10 million to blow up. So they're thrilled about it. This is number one. Number two in this is, the terrorist targets they don't meet the cost benefit criteria of the precision guided munition expended. But if you take opportunity costing, which in economics is defined as, the next best alternative foregone, which is how much damage would they have caused in India had they gotten through?
Right.
You balance those economics, it makes sense. So it has always been a target-rich environment. But what happened in Sindoor is, and this is another point that the Prime Minister made on the 10th of May, we gave you the opportunity to pretend nothing had happened, no military target had been hit, and for you to back off. You did not. You came out in support of terrorists, and therefore you will be targets, which is what happened on day 2 and 3. Day 3 was the most devastating day for Pakistan because
Yeah, that's when the air bases got hit.
the night of the 2nd and the night and the morning of the 4th day of operations, where we were literally blasting every single airfield and what have you out there. We have now put them on notice that the military will not be spared. Now, if you look at military targets, it is, again, Diwali's come. We've got 5 Diwalis and Durga Puja happening at the same time.
Yeah, and when I was looking at some of the media commentary about some of the findings that are coming out of this investigation, a lot of much ado was made about, the doctors module, that all these terrorists are doctors and how shocking that is. But at the same time, someone like me who also has connections to Kashmir, I think of Ayman al-Zawahi was a doctor. Even closer to home, you lived in Kashmir in the 90s. I'm sure Abdul Ahad Guru was someone who you were familiar with. So is it really that shocking that, that this happened?
2 things I've heard this time.
Yeah.
Homegrown terror. And how could doctors be terrorists? Well, guess what? Ordinary people aren't terrorists. Ordinary people tend to riot. They don't become terrorists. Leave aside Ajmal Kasab.
Yeah.
Ajmal Kasab was trained because that was the only role he could aspire to. It was kind of paramilitary training. Excuse me. Terrorists who... a terrorist is essentially a person with disposable income, middle class to lower upper class, who has time to go online, self-radicalize, train, get a sense of gripe by watching all these videos on YouTube about how, Kashmiris are being persecuted and Muslims are being genocided, and the smog in Delhi is actually Muslims being gassed off. It's not fires burning, etc., etc. They have that time. They have the disposable income to do something about their anger. Poor people, ordinary people do not have that, which is why you will see a lot of rioters. The rioter demographic and the terrorist demographic are almost never the same.
Right, they're often...
Look at the Sri Lanka Easter bombings. It was carried out by one of the richest families in Sri Lanka. These were very rich. And, an ordinary Muslim is a man of his village and his local community. He doesn't have time to look outside. It is the medium to high disposable income category, which is usually a professional in India, who has the time to look around, develop this sense of grievance, and then do something about it. So, both. And what do you mean by homegrown terror? Like, how many terrorists have we had that are completely homegrown? Even in Kashmir, it was the
Right.
initial batch of terrorists who were infiltrated from, the leftovers of the Afghan jihad. Uh, but after that, a lot of them were homegrown terrorists.
Oh
Azhar
yeah.
Masood, Syed Salahuddin, these were all people who had been election agents in that infamous
Yeah.
1989
That's
election.
you're right. Syed Salahuddin actually
Yeah,
stood as an MLA candidate
he did.
from
Yeah.
Amira Kalal, I think, and Yasin Malik was his polling agent. Yeah.
Yeah. And they then went over and, allegedly disillusioned with the process, etc., etc. So it was very, very normal. Uh, uh, it is always, um, in the Indian context, rich people. I think in the European context, it's, Europeans have a lot of disposable income and they've got, a state which literally puts them on a very generous dole for being unemployed. So
Yeah.
let's what is probably lower class out there who live in the banlieues of Paris is not the same. They would probably have the same living standard as a well-paid middle-rung doctor in India.
Yeah. And going through some of the names of the people who have been arrested, there is one, I guess, interesting character, and one is that was the lady doctor from Lucknow, the Shaheen Syed, who was apparently connected to Jaish-e-Mohammed's women's wing. Now, that's another thing, I guess, a bifurcation that I guess the media commentary it makes sometime between terrorists who are Kashmiri Muslims and then terrorists and terror groups that are from other parts of India. Is this something to take note of? Is it unusual, you think, that there was an Indian Muslim that was not from J&K that somehow got wrapped up with this terror group?
Not really. We'd been expecting it for a while because, that ever since 370 got abrogated,
Yeah.
this uniqueness that Kashmir had, a lot of our mutual Kashmiri friends would, be like, yeah, 370 shouldn't have gone. And Kashmiri Hindus, by the way, because, it made us feel special. I'm like, dude, what's the matter with you? But anyway, so the more Kashmir integrates with India, you're actually going to see this, that mental block that somehow we are different and Indian Muslims are different and Kashmiri Muslims are different. You're going to see those walls shatter pretty damn quickly. This is just the beginning. This is not the end. There will be a lot more Shaheen Saids, both in being a non-Kashmiri Muslim who gets tied up with a Kashmiri Muslim uh, um, uh,
Terror outfit that's
enclave,
focused there, yeah, mostly.
and also the fact that you're going to see a lot more women. I'm actually very surprised it took such a long time for this kind of women terror planners to come to India. Because if you look at Hezbollah, Hamas, and especially the secular terrorism that hit Israel in the 70s under the PLO, uh, uh, both Lebanese and PLO terrorists, a lot of the bombers and suicide bombers since then were women.
That's right.
And generally, if you read the literature about it, women tend to be a lot more focused. They tend to be much more serious. They tend to be scrutinized a lot less. And therefore, they get away with a lot more. And they are, in fact, much, much more dangerous than male bombers and things like that. So, not surprising. But a third aspect to this, uh, I'm sorry to use the term silver lining, but silver lining it is under such circumstances, is it also shows you a certain desperation within the Pakistanis that they had to fuse two different terror cells, which, if you're a terror planner, is something you never do. You want each silo to be protected as a redundancy measure.
Right.
So it shows you there's a certain level of desperation in their planning, where they had to fuse these two in order to get it done. They breached operational secrecy. And I suspect a lot of the seizures of ammonium nitrate, tons of ammonium nitrate and RDX and ammunition and guns that were seized were precisely because operational secrecy had been breached and these two cells had started communicating with each other.
Which is why they went down like dominoes
Exactly.
when they did, pretty much. I'm glad you actually brought up the Palestine connection, because it's actually something that even shows up in Francesca Marino's book and was even in the news somewhat. Prior to Pahalgam, there were members of Hamas that were seen at events in Bahawalpur, also in Rawalkot in Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and made all kinds of statements, were fettered out. Yet, this proxy, I don't know what the right word is, I guess, an alias for the LET, this TRF, they seem to be borrowing from that lexicon of,
Yeah.
of Palestinian jihadists. And in fact, when you look at the narratives on Israel's war with Hamas, what exactly, what is Hamas doing in Pakistan is a question that doesn't seem to be coming up.
Yeah.
I mean, where do you think they fit into all this?
I've spoken to some Hamas folks in the past because in what was 2011, I'd gone into the Gaza Strip.
Oh, wow.
Horrible trip because the one thing that hit me was the overwhelming sense of fear I got from it. Everybody was scared because they didn't know what Hamas would do to them. It was kangaroo courts and things like that. As opposed to the West Bank, where people are a lot more laid back and chilled out, and you can actually have a chat about things. And they seem to be very clear. This is Hamas. Seem to be very clear that Palestine is Palestine. It's a standalone. They're not going to get involved. And because that trip had to do with certain Indian government aid computers and things like that had to be installed in schools in Gaza and the West Bank. I don't think it ultimately made it to Gaza. It just made it to the West Bank. And they were very clear, look, we have to show some unity about Islam and things like that because, the Ummah and so on and so forth. But there is no real operational cooperation. There is no real coordination between the two. They don't want to take on the Pakistani cause the Pakistani cause in Kashmir because they're very clear it disrupts and deflects from their fight. They are very much Palestine first, everything else second. For Pakistan, it's different. You see, the Kashmir, as Musharraf used to say, the Kashmir issue, the issue doesn't get enough traction. So they need to link it up to an international cause célèbre to make it sexier than it seems. They're not getting the recruits. Palestine's getting all the recruits. Why is it that Greta Thunberg and co do all this for Palestine?
Keep sailing to.
Yeah. But nobody wants to take a, air flotilla to Kashmir and, highlight the issues, the genocide of the Kashmiri people that's going on by the Indian occupation forces out there. So it is basic minimum lowest common denominator cooperation that happens. Not much to be read into, but something definitely to keep an eye out for, because you never know when these things interests intersect. You would rather be picking up on it before than regretting it later.
Right. And then the very next day after this Red Fort bombing, there was a suicide bombing in Islamabad claimed by this breakaway faction of the TTP. Given, I guess, the mess the Pakistanis currently find themselves in when it comes to, I guess, both the Talibans at this point. I mean, if one wants to make that bifurcation. What do you make of that?
Look, basically, the Taliban are playing the same game that the Pakistanis played for the entire 20 years of the American occupation of Afghanistan, which is what? Pakistan used to say, look, we're a governance deficit state, bro. We can't control all these assets. It's a porous border. There's, kinship, cross-border kinship and things like that.
Yeah.
So that's what the Taliban in Afghanistan are doing. They're saying, bro, you're a broken state. We're an even more broken state. We're recovering from a civil war. How do you expect us to control all of this? There's cross-border kinship. They're using the exact same arguments on Pakistan. And by the way, I happen to think I've been to Afghanistan. I've smoked hashish with the Taliban. I think they're top-notch blokes. I find them very secular and progressive. And I think they're just Nehruvians with guns, to paraphrase Arundhati.
But that being said, and there are a number of voices that are online that have been saying this. One is a purportedly a ex CIA agent called Sarah Adams. Uh, Francesca Marino also belabors this point in a book. When we look at the Taliban, they still have many of their old terror links, such as with Jaish-e-Mohammed. We keep hearing about Nangarhar. Given that India's relationship is evolving with the Taliban, I think we're supposed to have an envoy in later this month at some point. Can we foresee potential collaboration with the Taliban when it comes to jihadists that are hostile to us on their soil? Or is that too ambitious, given whatever structural restraints there might be, given the Haqqanis and uh, Akhundzada and so forth?
Um, I think it's more than just a possibility. I think it's slowly morphing. It's actually rapidly morphing into reality. And it's across the board with the Haqqanis, with all the factions of the Taliban. The Taliban in 1998 did not know Pakistan. And to use a biblical phrase, Esther knew the king. The Taliban now knows the Pakistanis. They know exactly what the Pakistanis want, and they certainly don't want it. So there is an alignment of interests right now. The Taliban are no longer as ideological as they used to be in the 1990s. They're not these. So if they were Taliban, which is basically student,
Right.
at that time, you're basically a middle-aged gentleman right now. So you've grown past your, puberty-driven socialism and become financially independent and become right-wing and conservative, as is the natural progression of things.
Right.
That's what's happened out there. And what you're seeing is they are the ones that are very keen for an alliance with India. I mean, we don't do formal alliances, but Afghanistan and India have always played, uh, a team game when it's come to Pakistan, more or less. Uh, that is morphing because the Taliban now understand geopolitics very keenly. They didn't outsource, they don't now outsource their geopolitics to Pakistan like they once did. The Pakistanis are regretting it very, very badly. That's fine. The thing is, how do we mature a relationship? What is the danger of a blowback? That is what we need to be careful about.
Right.
Now, look at the way America has Al Jolani shaking hands with Trump in the White House. This is a man who, till what, a year
Yeah, had
back,
a bounty on his head. Yeah.
at $10 million bounty, he was one of the most wanted terrorists.
Yeah.
And now the bugger's in a suit
And
and
he's
in a
been laundered in the most effective way
yeah.
possible.
He's actually a good-looking guy if you look at him. Like he's looking good in these tailored suits and a trimmed beard. He's no longer. It's amazing how a good beard trim can transform you to
From jihadist to statesman.
statesman. And they pull that off. Look at China. America abandoned Taiwan for China in the 70s and did that full flip, right? Through the accreditations committee in the UN, even without a vote, they managed to get Taiwan kicked out and China put back in. These things happen. You have to, you can't be doctrinaire and ideological in policy. Is there a fear of fallout and blowback? Yes, like we saw in Sri Lanka. I remember as a kid, I used to feel very strongly because I'm half Tamil. I used to feel very strongly about the Jaffna Tamils and things like that. Um, and we had sent our troops in. They were supposed to be helping out the Tamils. Ultimately, even the Tamils turned on them, and the Sinhalas and the Tamils decided that we may hate each other, but we hate the Indians more, and they were basically coordinating attacks. Yes, blowback can happen. It is a skill of your statesmanship and diplomacy how much you can restrict it. Again, opportunity costing. What is more expensive? Can you deal with 1 or 2 episodes of blowback? Or is it just cheaper to endure 50, 60 terror bombs coming in from Pakistan?
Right. So this is something you are bullish on, obviously. When
I
you
bet.
when you look at that relationship, do you see the Haqqani network as a problem or something that we can perhaps cultivate in some way or
Oh, no, 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 no.
Yeah.
I'm friends with one or two people in the Haqqani network. They're lovely people. They're very easy to work with.
Okay.
Yeah, the one thing that binds us very closely, even with the Haqqanis, is even the Haqqanis, the Quetta Shura, everyone,
Yeah.
they hate the Pakistanis. They may not love us, but if not love, we can work with. I think hate is a much more genuine emotion than love. Some girl may fall in love with you for your wealth, but nobody will hate you. The hatred will always be 100% honest. The love can be, gold diggers or whatever.
Okay. And it's interesting because even in connection to this module, apparently someone did travel to Afghanistan. I've just read a, a Praveen Swami article about that. The other place where some, or if not all of these people travel to is Turkey, which is also not
Mm.
surprising given the way relationships have been going. Earlier this year, I recall reading about an incident where you actually complained to the relevant ministry and had a Turkish cargo handling company, which with connections to Erdogan
Yeah.
himself, kicked out, which was astonishing that that was happening at all, given the security risks. But if you had to break down Turkey's cooperation with Pakistan against our interests, what would be the cornerstone there?
So, this Turkish cooperation with Pakistan isn't new. It starts from this book by a gentleman called Sir Olaf Karo. And he wrote this book, The Wells of Power, in 1950 or 52, I forget when,
Right.
where he said there are three main axes against Russia: Turkey, Iran, and Pakistan. Now, Pakistan doesn't have a border with Russia or the USSR then. It was Afghanistan that had it, but for whatever reason, he put Pakistan. The Iranians, the Pakistanis, and the Turks really took it to heart, and Turkish collaboration has been very deep with Pakistan. To the extent, if you actually go and talk to Turks, they believe that it was Muhammad Ali Jinnah who ran the Khilafat movement and not Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. Whereas the reality is, Jinnah left the Congress because Gandhi started the Khilafat
Supporting,
movement.
yeah, the Khilafat movement.
Exactly, right. But imagine they actually believe it was the Pakistan movement that supported. And I don't know how the Pakistanis have conveyed this and India hasn't conveyed the counter story, but this is what the Turks believe. And
So
these
this
are,
mythology took root in Turkey at
yeah,
some point.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It was the Pakistan movement that started the Khilafat. And they play on the word that it isn't Khalifat movement, it is the Khilafat movement, which is to oppose. And it was done to preserve Turkey and not the not the Caliph, who was also the Ottoman emperor at that time.
Right.
As so, it's taken root since then. Uh, Turkey, because Turkish aerospace industries is very well developed as a local subcontractor for the Americans. They've been supplying the Pakistanis for the last 30, 40 years. When the Presler sanctions were put on Pakistani F-16s because of the nuclear program, it was in fact Turkish aerospace industries that was supplying all the spares for the Pakistani F-16s. Um, in between, for a while, during the late Manmohan Singh period, there was some kind of, early Manmohan Singh period and late Vajpayee period. There was a certain modus vivendi we had achieved with the Turks, which is, we'll throw a lot of business your way. You can do investment, you can do whatever you want. Chilebi, the company, was
Yeah.
part of that. But in return, you need to stop all this crap with Pakistan. And at that point, it was easy because Turkey was looking for financial opportunities. The problem with Erdogan, of course, is, let's not get into Erdogan. You know him, I know him.
Right.
It-
It'll be a
it's
long
a long,
tangent. Yeah.
he can't resist meddling. And he's kind of, there is no longer this cost benefit analysis of is economics more important or is ideology more important? And when you look at it, what is Turkey getting from Pakistan in terms of geopolitical advantage or economics or military? Zero.
It's
What
precisely
is
why I'm so befuddled.
right?
Yeah.
I think I've lost my hair thinking about this. Uh, I don't know. I don't know. Uh, Even the Turks we talk to, they're like, boss, don't ask us. These orders come from above. Maybe, well, their speculation is that there's some kind of personal financial dealings because the Pakistanis, one great skill that they have is that they're able to grease palms in a very legitimate business contract way of the families that matter rather than the nations.
Oh, I see.
Have they done that? We don't know. And by the way, Chalebi, the company that we got kicked out, served me a legal notice and everything. They didn't proceed with the defamation, but they served me a legal notice.
Okay. Yeah.
But I'm very proud of getting them kicked out of India. Yeah.
So when you look at this Turkish problem that we're dealing with, what, according to you, I guess would be very effective ways? I mean, we've already seemed to have started it somewhat in the aftermath of Sindoor. But if we were to look at imposing some kind of costs on Turkey for being party to, I guess, terror against India, what could that look like?
I think we've started. I think kicking out Chalebi was the first statement of intent. It's like, it's not bad enough,
Yeah.
but it's gonna make you think very hard. The only point of interest for Turkey, well, for Erdogan, I could see was Bayraktar, because Bayraktar drones, the family is very close. They're related to Erdogan himself.
Yeah.
So
And they were used against us in the
exactly.
during
Uh,
Sindoor.
Not very effectively, but
Yeah, but used nonetheless. Yeah.
other than that, we've sent that message to Turkey. There were the calls to boycott. Indigo and Air India, if you notice, they after the peak tourist season was over, because that was Turkey's peak tourist season. They culled down their flights. They're very iffy about renewing the leases of the aircraft that they got from Turkish leasing companies and things. I think Turkey has got the message, but it's probably a message that should have been sent much earlier, because we know Turkey had gone back on the deal to lay low about 6-7 years back, when what they started doing was they were taking all these Kashmiri students, especially relatives of the All-Party Hurriyat Conference,
Oh yes,
and
I
giving them
believe
scholarship.
Sayyid Ali Shah Gilani's
Yeah.
granddaughter was there for a while, I think.
Yeah. She was in India today, and then I did something that got her kicked out of India today, and then she went off on a scholarship to Turkey. And then we were tracing these people in Turkey. A lot of them got employment in TRT, Turkish Radio.
The media, yeah.
So, it was a complete package. You come here, you can lead a European life while preaching about Muslim values back home in Kashmir. But you can roam around in shorts and bikinis, and uh, you know. So
You get the best of both.
it was being very deliberately done. They were creating the university system validation, because Turkish universities are rated higher than Indian universities. They were giving them institutional validation, and they were employing them as journalists so that they'd get journalistic credentials to then go and populate things. So Turkey was playing a destructive role, but not a lethal role. I think in this conflict, it transitioned to lethality, and that's where the line was drawn.
And when you actually look at Turkey itself, is there any strong popular voice that is sort of openly criticized this, or is that not possible in Erdogan's Turkey?
It isn't just to do with Erdogan. I think Turkey's knowledge of India is as much of a lacuna as the Indian education system is about, say, Africa.
Okay.
Technically, Africa is the closest continent, but 90% of what we read in history is European history.
Yeah, it's outside of our worldview for some reason. Yeah.
And the Turks are very much like that. Their only exposure to something Indian is turkey meat, which the turkey meat in Turkey is called Indian. It's called the Indian bird.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so the world is divided into the names of Turkey. If it came via the Ottomans, the bird is called turkey. If it came via the Portuguese, the bird is called Indian. So there's turkey and there's coconuts, which are called Hindustani cevize. Cevize is walnut, so they're called Indian walnuts. Other than that, Turks know nothing about India. They don't care about India. It's outside their, scope and vision. The Iranians very desultorily tell you, oh, you used to speak Farsi for a while. More Farsi literature came out of India. that is in the connection with the Turks. Because even though Chagatai was the language spoken, there were a lot of Turkish dialects which were the military dialects in India. The Turks don't see any connection with them and Indian Muslims per se. Then there's this thing about the Khilafat movement I told you. Their
Right.
knowledge of India is virtually non-existent. There is no attempt to understand it. It's a huge lacuna for them, uh, and they don't care. They don't care. I guess the best way of looking at it is they've got nothing to lose.
Yeah, I think that's true actually, in some ways. Unless we start imposing costs as you're talking.
And the thing is, how will you impose more costs? What are
Yeah.
you going to do really? Kicking out Chalebi was one.
Yeah.
Maybe Turkish Airlines will be next because Turkish Airlines is very cheap, it's very efficient, and it's a huge, a transit hub.
Yeah.
Very important, at least for Indian passengers going to Europe. Maybe you can get rid of that. But other than that, realistically, what are you going to do to Turkey? With Greece, can you supply Greece with anything? Can you supply what do Cyprus or Greece want from you that they can't get cheaper from somewhere else? Nothing. So, they have a huge propensity to meddle in our backyard. We don't have that propensity to meddle much in their backyard.
And that's perhaps something that should be thought about and developed. Now, before I let you go, if we were to refocus on this terror module, this university in Faridabad comes up. This Al Falah University. I This may be because I'm ignorant. I had never heard of it before.
Meaning,
The terror attack. A lot of these characters were there. Alarmingly, somewhat, there was even a professor that had been dismissed by the J&K government for having terror links, yet was somehow hired by this university. And I mean, it almost seems ridiculous. Well, I mean, I'm sure that they were under surveillance, but at the same time, it does seem ridiculous. I mean, when it comes to institutions like this, what are we looking at as far as potential scale goes? I mean, how many Al Falah type universities could there be functioning in this
I'm not
country, Ajay?
fully convinced that Al Falah management played a role in this.
Yeah,
Because remember, universities tend to, in your bachelor's and master's, come along. Even us, I don't know about you, but definitely me. I thought I could conquer the whole world. And I used to be highly reactionary and, chanting for global peace and end imperialism and
full of beans. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
uh, i- it's a very fertile environment, and very frequently you will have very passionate teachers who will keep supporting the students and egging them on because they believe that students should be uh, they, they need to have their catharsis in university so that they don't have it later on in life. So beat your chest as much as you want now so that you don't have to beat it later on.
yeah.
The good professors, a lot of professors, as we saw with the JNU protest and things, turned out to be really rotten characters. uh, Now, does Al Falah have some rotten characters? Yes. Is it because it's a Muslim university? Is it going to become a sort of, uh, uh, you know, a, an intersection point of multiple gripes coming and fusing with other gripes and leading to radicalization? Yes. I think all universities tend to radicalize differently. If you
Right.
go to bigger university, I'm sure you'll radicalize in an American Christian right wing way. You go to JNU, you used to radicalize in a left wing way.
Yeah,
99% grow out of it, 1% never do. 99% of teachers are usually very good, 1% would be malignant. The problem is, when those things come together, it becomes synergistic. So synergy is when, 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, 1 + 1 ends up equaling 5. Um, the thing is, there are ways of dealing with this. The issue is then it destroys the university student teacher relationship. It's in my opportunity costing, it's probably not worth doing. So I won't blame the university. I'm more about the natural dynamics of universities and how do you keep an eye on it? I don't know.
that's an interesting question to ponder. Abhijit, thank you very much for your time. That was most insightful.
Thank you so much, Ishan. Pleasure always talking to you.